Good evening. The Design Review Board number 1 public meeting of September the 30th is called to order. Please refrain from talking amongst yourselves during the meeting, and please turn off or put on vibrate all cell phones and pagers. If you need to talk, please leave the meeting room. Anyone who wishes to speak, including applicants, is asked to completely fill out one of the speaker cards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff. You will be called to present a case or speak on a specific item as desired. Anyone who wishes to be re-noticed about a case must completely fill out one of the postcards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff to receive notice of subsequent meetings. Current Design Review Board agendas are available by calling our Design Review Board hotline at 818-548-3171 or by visiting our website at www.ci.glendale.ca.us. A handout describing the procedures of the meeting, possible board decisions, and Design Review Board reconsideration and appeals is available at the table by the front door. Please note that all appeals must be filed within 15 calendar days of the Design Review Board decision date. The chairperson may reorder agenda items at his or her discretion. Roll call. Board Member Eliano is absent. Chairman Insua?
Here.
Board Member Palmer? Here. Board Member Simonian is also absent, and Board Member Yu. A report regarding posting of the agenda. The agenda for this meeting was posted on the bulletin board outside City Hall at or before 5 p.m. on September the 23rd, 2010. Oral communications. Discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. I do not have any oral communication cards. Chairman Instua? None? None. All right. Which brings us to staff announcements. Currently, there are no staff announcements this evening. So I will turn the meeting over to Chairman Insua for the 2 items on tonight's agenda.
Very good. Good evening, everyone. We have 2 items this evening. I have 1 speaker card for each project, and I see more than 1 person out there for each project. So if you do want to speak on either one today, the speaker request paperwork's there, and if you could hand it to staff. But as of right now, there's only 1. Okay, so let's begin. The first case number today is 1 PDR 2010-032-A, project address 534 through 538 North Kenwood Street. And why don't we have staff presentation of the project?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. The project is directly behind you. I see that we have the material board has been taken down, and I believe the photographs are also there. Mr. Yu, I believe, has. This is a first-time review by the board. A couple of weeks ago, the case was scheduled, but because there was a public noticing problem, it was continued until this date. This project was subject to an environmental review and 2 variances. When we look real quickly here, if you saw the photographs, you have 2 houses, one on each lot. In fact, if we look over here on this idea here, these are the 2 houses. This is north at the top. We have these 2 2 homes of an older craftsman style. The city's looked at this one here and has determined that it has some historical significance because it's unique design. It's rare in the city. This one is less, though very interesting, is less so in the city. And so we've decided to keep this, and we've worked with the applicant for a number of years. They came in with a design at one time which they were allowed to do to build, I believe it was 15 units on these 2 lots. And but we wanted them to keep this, and so after a good number of going back and forth, they decided to keep this and build 5 units around it. And that's what we have here. You can see here that on our site plan, we have the maintenance of this house here, and then here's the 5 new ones going around it. You can look at the floor plans and the exhibits that we've given you to give you an idea on that. They have a central corridor area with some landscape areas through here. Their garages are all off of the alley, none through the street, so they come down the alley. The driveway's on the north end of the site. There's also 2 garages, 4 parking spaces over here. But the other 4 are over here. Now the variances, there's a list of them, but I think you probably saw that in your staff report. The hearing officer looked at the case and made a decision at the time on I believe it was in December of 2009, that we could make the findings to approve the case, and then the environmental was certified at that time. Today we'll just acknowledge the environmental. I believe hopefully that was part of your package. And but the environmental, we were looking at an oak tree. The oak tree location is here in this area here. You can probably see a note on it for the oak tree. There was a note where the Urban Forestry Department issued a permit to remove the oak tree, but the applicant remembers it mainly as a maintenance issue, not necessarily a removal of the oak tree. However, if it was to be removed, there were mitigation measures. The other condition was to maintain that home, this older home right here, which the city has determined to be individually eligible for listing at the local level. Now, the existing project is located in a multifamily zone. One of the, let's check this real quick. It is a multifamily zone, and it's surrounded by multifamily buildings ranging from 2 to 3 stories in height. You can see that in your photographs when you're looking through the photographic survey there. This project will be 3 stories. The 3rd story is up in that attic area. That's where you have the height of the roof, but it has some consistency and resemblance to the Craftsman style home, which the applicant worked with staff in trying to recreate. Now we have the 3 categories: the site planning, the mass and scale, and the building design and details, and I can go through those real briefly. I kind of jumped here to the summaries. Overall, the site planning, staff felt the site planning was pretty well conceived. The building and its relationship to the street and the alley are similar to other homes and developments in the neighborhood. We did have a concern about the common open space. We felt it could be made to be more usable, maybe have some benches or seating. And the landscape areas, again, we felt that the landscaping tended to be more of a corridor area as opposed to an area that might be usable. However, it does comply with the variance that they had requested, which also was noted in your staff report. But as far as being usable as opposed to just a corridor, that was one of the issues that the staff looked at for design review. As far as the mass and scale, the staff felt that it was an appropriate mass and scale for the neighborhood. There was a concern about these roof elements here, which you'll see if you look through here, these roof elements. And so we had a condition on that. So if you look at the conditions, one was either to remove or to maybe bring the wall out. You can see the underlying balcony. It is a balcony element, so that this is a balcony, and that would be your top right there. And this is reflected on all the elevations if you look around, at least several of them. Anyway, the staff felt there was appropriate scale and massing overall for the mass and scale. And then finally, for the building design and details, we've again felt that it was compatible within the neighborhood context and is consistent internally with the details that the Craftsman style has. We did have some recommendations, though. We felt that the base of the buildings that are now stucco, we thought maybe a different type material would be better than the stucco material at the ground floor level, particularly visible from the streets and alley, the public views. We thought maybe a more appropriate material might be used for that. Made some suggestions. Also the brick, we recommended something for brick caps as opposed to these stucco elements there. And we made some conditions on that. So when we go down to the conditions, they're pretty much the same thing that I mentioned before. Landscape plan for the central common open area to be more usable. Tenants, including seating. Use siding, brick or stone, or combination of them for the first floor levels visible to the street and the alley instead of the stucco. I use a brick material for the column caps instead of the precast material. And either remove the third floor partially covered balcony roofs or extend the balcony side walls below the cantilever roof to provide visual support and an appearance of a more traditional craftsman dormer. That was a real quick, brief summary of everything, but I can go into more detail. I have all the files. I can look things up for you if you have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Baxter. Any questions for Mr. Baxter?
Yeah, so we haven't determined whether the oak tree is going to remain or not in the center courtyard.
The applicant is saying it is going to remain. The request is now as written from the urban forestry permit issued to remove oak tree for development purposes. I just wrote that down from what was online. But the applicant said their intent was to keep the oak. Now, the environmental, if I may, ma'am, let me just walk over here so I... You should have...
Yeah, we do.
Okay, let me just go. Vote on that because we have part of the negative. For instance, if the staff, you said it.
Only condition.
Yes, if they were. If they were.
But if it was-
It's not their intent.
If it's to remain, are there mitigating conditions from the urban forester?
Not at this time. I'm sure that they'll have it fenced off and not store items. There are some,
But I'm saying regarding the building around it.
around there. The applicant has to follow. On it. So when they build a fence around it,
No, I understand that. What I'm talking about is the paving in the building that's going to be approaching onto the oak tree. What problems might result? We can ask the applicant.
well, actually, it's open right here though. There's no subterranean parking.
They appear
This
to
is-
have concrete paving
Oh, I see what you're saying.
in the
Well, you
building
know-
itself, so
Yes, ma'am. I was going to say that the existing, that existing house actually is like right on top of that tree. It's right there. The trees were growing, I've seen that. It's sort of like growing right up the back of the house.
okay.
So, I mean, there
Make
is
sure it's
some type of
addressed.
foundation right there at the base of that house right now. I mean, something, you know, I'm actually kind of surprised it's that far away. Looks a little tighter than that to me. When I was-
Any questions for staff? Thank you. Okay, why don't we have our applicant come up and speak towards the project. Speaker name is Mr. Bob Taylor. Your name and address, please, sir.
Thank you. My name is Bob Taylor. I'm with Nakaishi Associates, 2910 West Broadway, Suite 200, City of Los Angeles. I won't restate everything that Chris has already presented, but I would like to go over the suggested recommendations for conditions of approval. I'll start with item number 1. It says, submit a revised landscape plan designed for the central common open space area. It needs to provide more usable space for the tenants, including seating. This is a space that is provided to allow access for the tenants to access the street and the mailbox, to accept deliveries. It is a usable space. I don't think we want to encourage any other type of use, barbecues, tennis courts, swimming pools. It's too small a project to allow for any other recreation type of use. Item number 2, use siding, brick, or stone, or combinations of them at the first floor level visible to the street and alley instead of the stucco material. While stucco is appropriate for the craftsman style. I've looked at many books that have craftsman style buildings in them, and they do have stucco. Stucco is appropriate here because many of the adjacent buildings have stucco, so it is appropriate. Use a brick material for the column caps instead of the precast material. Well, what we're doing is we're matching the precast column caps of the existing historically eligible building next door. So that'll tie the two buildings together. And then either remove the third floor partially covered balcony roofs or extend the balcony sidewalls below the cantilever roofs to provide visual support. If you'll look at the roof plan, you'll see where these third floor decks are and the locations of those roofs, and you'll see that they're not visible from Kenwood. And you'll also notice that there is a overhang that is consistent with the rest of the building. There's a 3-foot overhang which we're providing, and the support is provided from the roof rafters. So no vertical support is necessary. I believe this look, if you're looking at it straight on, is a better appearance, both from inside the unit and outside the unit, than what staff is suggesting by the removal of the roof element itself. And now I'm available for questions.
Okey-doke. Any questions for the architect and applicant?
Are you going to be, with this type of architecture, are you going to be putting gutters and downspouts indicative of a craftsman style, or?
I don't know that, because now we're doing the drought-tolerant plant. Maybe that rainwater needs to go back into the ground, so maybe we're not going to have gutters and downspouts at this time. Let the water fall onto the decomposed granite.
And my second question is the surrounds on the windows, what size are those? Are those similar to the existing dwelling that's
They're going
remaining?
to be, I believe they're 1 by 4s surrounds.
And what are they on the existing adjacent?
That I don't know. It's not our intent to match everything on the existing.
No, I
Adjacent
understand. I
house,
just
yeah,
was
yeah.
concerned whether it might look too small or too flimsy.
I think the one that they're proposing is smaller than the existing, graphically, I think.
I think that's all the
That's-
questions I have right now.
That's here or there, I guess.
Mr. Yu, any questions for
No,
you?
I'm okay.
Of course.
One more thing. Is there any reason, or are you maintaining any of the existing trees on where the house that's being saved? It looks like
Just the
everything's
oak tree. The oak tree that's on the northeast corner of the existing house. We're going to keep that. I believe the permit that was pulled from the urban forester was to trim that tree and lace it out. And that has been done. So,
No trees or shrubs on,
no, we're providing all new shrubbery and landscaping to meet the drought-tolerant requirements, California-friendly.
Okay. I don't have any questions right now. We may have a few as we start talking about it. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Why don't we have the public session closed for a while? Why don't we discuss it? Why don't you go first and tell us what you think your thoughts are.
I like the design, I like it a lot. I have just a few minor concerns on the south elevation on sheet A4. This particular roof pitch is different than the other ones, except where they have balconies. And it looks a little shallow. Might have a little more depth to it. Might increasing that pitch if it's possible without hitting a window. And then on sheet, let's see, find it here. The easterly portion on sheet A6, which would be, these stairs, when you come up these stairs, some of the supports look a little flimsy, so I'm not sure if maybe these could be beefed up to look like some of the other supports that we have in the front or in other areas.
Other one right
And it may be
underneath it.
right in here.
Talking about the column supports?
The column supports, correct. And it may just be the way the drawings are, and I can't read them. And then this column should not be the brick. They should match what we've got on here. Roof pitch. And there's a privacy wall in the courtyard. I'm not sure if that's a wall or fence. Maybe that can be answered later on. And a comment regarding the landscape. There are 4 existing camphor trees out in front of the parkway, and we've shown 6 or 5 crepe myrtles in the front yards. That may be too large of a tree to put under the camphors because the camphor are going, their coverage is clear into the front yard, so it might suggest something like the cercis or a smaller tree so we don't end up with big canopies covering the whole building. I think I'll wait till we come up with some other comments. Some more.
Thank you. Mr. Yu?
I too like the project. I think it's well done, and the site planning makes sense, and you know how you've laid out the parking and those kinds of things. I think the smaller building, I guess building 2, proportionally it does function well. It looks appropriate. The height is a little bit tall, but I think compared to some of the buildings that are already there, it makes sense for what it is. Because it looks like it's towering over the other house, but it's not really in the neighborhood. It's not. But once you get back to the larger building in the back, I think some of the clarity is lost a little bit. I think it looks a little more, almost like there were some additions done already, as there was a single house, and then almost a lot of roof lines are kind of dying into different parts, so it's not as clear as maybe the front building that's out there. Let's see, what else? I think maybe a little more consistency in that you had mentioned about, Judy, the columns and how you have a couple areas where you have like a double column that mimics the existing house that's there, and then you have some areas where it's a single column, but one's bigger, or other ones are smaller. Maybe a little more consistency in the detailing of it. Color-wise, I do like sort of this deep, rich color that's there, but maybe take a look at and consider maybe using something maybe in the upper portions a little bit lighter just to lighten it up, because then if you have the same color going all the way through, even though it's a different material, it's going to read as this huge mass. And so maybe just take a look at that, especially once you get to the sides where you're changing, you know, the pattern of your siding going across up here versus down here, because you do sort of have three different patterns, but all similar colors. It wouldn't be as effective, I think. But you know, the color of the windows and the green, I think they go well together. Let's see. I think that's all I had for now. Regarding the landscaping, you talked about how you didn't foresee the common spaces, you know, or you didn't want to plan them to be sort of areas where, as you put it, I guess, large areas where people would come and congregate. But it's going to happen, and I think to be sort of sensitive to that is not such a bad thing. So I'll leave it at that for now.
Okay. Thank you. I think the consistent comments are that it's a nice project and that it's refreshing to look at what your inventory is, they sometimes say, what you've got there right now in the neighborhood, and try to find something that works within that architectural, I don't want to say style, because architecture and style, architectural, it's established. Instead of just looking at, if you look at your photographic survey, there was a time in the past where this project would have been a project that ignored the existing house. And it's interesting that you're finding architectural elements and style and design and materials which is common to the period home, and I think that that's a good way to go when you're trying to do infill. I think the days where you just see house from a period and then see a big apartment building that has nothing to do in relationship, size, scale, material, texture is bad, and you see them. This doesn't do that. So I have nothing really more to add from what we've said, and we'll refine those. I think the struggle or the issue with respect to the roof at the dormers, I think it's a matter of the drawing not being drawn properly in those elevations. For example, when you look at number 4, when you look on number 4, exposed wood, outriggers, and all that other stuff, and you look at the size of the outrigger here, and it's a larger space. And if you look at the number 4, if you look at the outrigger here, it's a lot deeper. So when you look at it on elevation, there's something going on here because this little outrigger is the deepest outrigger. And then when you see it in the elevation, it goes back to scale of the other one. So I think it's just the drawing error that's starting to make you think, well, what's going on here? And it makes it look as if it's this unbalanced projection, where if it was actually drawn properly, I believe, that wouldn't be an issue. And I think that when you look around at the scale and proportion, it's okay. But I think it needs to be corrected. But I think in the end, it will be corrected. And I think that to try to put columns or some vertical structure to that doesn't work, because the primary structure that has columns are the entrances, and that's that primary entrance, so it speaks to that. The second one is I tried to figure out, why are these roofs flatter? I thought, what's going on here? And I just tried to go around the building, and I noticed that garages, these buildings right here, when you look at them at the primary areas, these roofs are flatter. So I'm trying to imagine, would that look good? I think it would. Because when you go above that plane, you see all the roofs then start taking a different pitch, and those other pitches are consistent. So for me, I think, that would work. It can go the other way. The architect chose to go this way. So I'm okay with it. But I can see your point where these lower roofs have a flatter slope, but when you look at the other buildings, they're all at that same pitch. So, okay, you can see it. At 12-foot height, they're all about that angle. And then the other stuff, I think, is just a matter of small tweaking here and there, but all in all, I think it's a very successful project. And then the last one, we always like to have common areas, because common areas in a community development, it's an important aspect of it, because it's an opportunity where it's just not. The problem is that I find when you don't have common areas and you try to develop a multifamily development in a relatively small lot, like we have seen over the years, you get a lot of corridors, you get a lot of single-loaded corridors, you get a lot of just no light and air, and it's just trying to put however many units you can put into that space. Here, I think it's a little different, and I heard what the architect was saying, and I'll go further than just the size of the lot. I think it also has to do with the way the lot works. If you notice in our site plan, what common area could you identify? Well, we identify it potentially here. So I started thinking okay, well, why doesn't this garage move forward? Well, we got the alley or the private driveway here, and if we move it forward, it could help, I think. But then I thought, okay, why don't we orientate this opening over to here? Now we can't, because we don't have turnaround. So when I look at the development, it's more like a courtyard development from the 30s, 40s, and 50s, where they could have had common areas. But for me, it's okay, because you've got a lot of these nice walkways, a lot of architecture going on, and to have a common area that maybe, like other projects should have, I don't see it as that necessary here, that necessary. If you were able to achieve that, okay. But I don't know how you could achieve it in the current way that you've laid this out. But I do have a question. This garage is for unit number 2? Okay, this garage, I see the walk. Why don't you come up and this garage opens here, and you walk down these steps and you come here, or this garage is for unit number 2 here, which I see unit 2, unit 2 garage, so they go through here, and there's that unit.
The code requires that the units be directly accessible to their garages, so
Yes.
that's what you have here.
Yes.
But this garage is for the existing house.
Okay. Okay, there it is. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that person.
They have a detached garage now. that it's not used for parking, so we're going to remove it and give them a new two-car garage.
Okay. Thank you, sir. So all in all, I think that we can fine tune it as we've have discussed, but in general, I think that we're all saying it's a very positive project and a good one. Thank you, sir. Oh, yes, you had a question?
Do you want me to respond to any of the...
Of course. Why don't we open the session, and please
Thank you.
feel free to help us.
Palmer mentioned the enclosed area in the courtyard. That'll be a fence providing privacy for a private patio. You mentioned the roof line as well, and I think Mr. Insua showed one of the directly behind him, the second, yes. The ridge line is not directly in the center of that structure, so you're seeing less of the roof from that side than you would if it was in the center. We are providing two different colors of green. One is the darker green for the shingles, which would be at the third floor level, and then the horizontal siding and the stucco will be the same green color.
So you're showing a different color but the same? Is that what you said?
We're showing, we're trying to show a darker color for the shingles.
Okay, so those are the accurate colors. Then.
Those are accurate colors, yeah.
They're
Those are
very
the paint
close.
samples, and we're trying to get markers that would match. This is the best we can do.
Okay.
One of them has a little more blue in it than the other. I think when it's visible in the sunshine, it'll more differential. Let's see, was there any other questions? Okay, yeah, we can consider changing the species.
I just look at it because
Yeah.
the canopies do cover quite a bit, and you'll end up, I'm thinking down the road, some of those trees will be 30 feet tall, approaching into those canopies.
Crepe myrtles get up to 30
yes.
feet? Oh, boy. Okay, then that is a problem.
I mean, it'll be a while, but
yeah.
this is hopefully going to be there for quite a while.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, sir.
We can use larger, thicker wood posts.
I think it was just to look at the posts and make
Yeah,
things
we can
consistent,
do
make
that.
sure
We can-
that they look supportive enough.
Thank you, sir. Yes.
Good evening. A couple of clarifications that we'd like to make on your comments. Staff had made a commentary in our report about the usefulness of the common open space. Rather than enlarging the common open space, I think what we were thinking or suggesting is that space between the garages to not be completely filled with plant material, that space could be a place where people can sit or gather or so on. So right now there doesn't seem to be an outdoor place where an outdoor common open space where people can gather, and understanding that that's the intent of the code, we had made that suggestion. Board Member Palmer had a question about the downspouts, and so we would like some clarification in a condition or consideration regarding downspouts, because we are aware that there will need to be some way to get the water down from the roofs on this project, and we understand the concern about having them integrated with the architecture. We also would like some clarification. Chair Insua, you talked about that the eaves over the dormers seem like they weren't drawn correctly, but they were designed correctly. We're not really seeing what you're meaning, so if you can clarify that, that would be helpful.
Why don't we have the architect come up, and hopefully we'll clarify. Me too. If you notice this in front elevation, the outrigger appears to be like a 4x8. And if you look at it in this elevation, or in this elevation here, you can see the depth is...
I can clarify that.
Okay.
Because we're looking at two beams.
Uh-huh.
We're looking at the lower beam on the edge,
Right.
and we're looking at the upper beam, which is here.
Okay, so there's so there's a line here and here.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, you look like you were going to say something.
Yes, so I guess what we had noticed is that the design as is, we had understood, if you look frontally at it, we had noticed the outriggers or beam supports, if you will, and the amount of cantilever for those is a little inconsistent with what we typically see on a dormer. So we were pointing that out.
Yeah. Well, certainly when you look at scale, it does read longer proportion, where I can see where you're saying, well, this is 3 feet or whatever. We did the same thing here. Perhaps it's a proportion thing, that this is 3 feet, but when you look at it as the overall roof, the proportion ratio works. And when you look at a relatively smaller eyebrow, like here, the proportion tends to look overly cantilevered. So,
Yeah, so when we had questioned the architect about that, I think what we were told is that that's covering an outdoor deck. Is that
Yes.
correct, Mr. Taylor?
Yes, it is correct. Here you can see the deck and the portion that it's projecting.
right. So if we look in here, there would be like a dashed line down in here.
Correct.
Yeah. So
Yeah. So in any case, we just wanted to make sure that the design was clear, because it seems to be correctly drawn, and if there are any comments or considerations from the board, that we understand that clearly. Thank you.
thank you, sir. Okay. So, and then the dormers. You want to jump in again?
I was just going to concur with the open space. I think if they're going to save the oak, you really can't do too much planting underneath it. Perhaps it's done with some gravel or decomposed granite, and a bench could fit in there, and it becomes a gathering area. Just that simple tree, I think, could be quite elegant.
Okay.
And that whatever is replaced, if you decide to replace the crepe myrtles in the front, that they be of substantial size, that it doesn't look like a little dwarf 15-gallon with the 3-story building. Depends on what the plant material is, but a minimum 24. The trees specified now are 24. But if they went to something like a Cirrus or something, which would be a small 24-inch box, maybe 5 feet tall. So we need something that's going to look substantial relative to the proportions of the building.
Mr. Mayor, did you after
Just,
hearing-
I guess the question that you had posed about the outriggers of the dormers, I'm fine with them. I think graphically they look a little beefier because those 3 pieces are all combined. And when you're standing in front of the building, you're not going to see any of it anyway. So I think we're okay the way they are, and they'll function well to protect some of the doors as they open up for weatherproofing and stuff. So I think it'll be fine.
Very good, sir. Okay. Anything else? No. Well, I'm just going to summarize what I have here, things I think that we would want to see. The downspouts, I think, would be an important element, of just letting it, instead of just letting it spill off the edges of the eaves. The existing house has downspouts, albeit they look retrofit and not from the period. But I think because I think you even mentioned, Ms. Reich, that code would require it, so it's something integrate into your design. I'm sure you'll be more than successful in doing that. The common areas, if I heard Ms. Palmer correctly, less of the landscaping or the tree, and reduce that and provide some seating. Third, the downspout or the dormer rafters are okay. And did I miss anything? Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Number 2. Board is not 2 would be use siding brick.
I don't think that's right.
Yeah, I think it's okay.
And,
I think they want us to speak up.
Okay, you might all like to adjust your microphones just to make sure that they're on and you're speaking into the microphone, please.
I don't think that's necessary. It would be the only brick that we have on the whole building.
Because it's fine.
There was a comment about providing a level of consistency, because there seemed to be, if we're looking at A7, there's double columns under a pergola. There were those single columns at the stair, as Ms. Palmer mentioned, and then a completely different column configuration at the front porch. So
I don't think it's
Hello? Yes. Okay, we'll double check.
But you're speaking
Yeah.
more into this one right here, though. They're both lit?
You know, actually, yeah, Chris, if you don't mind speaking.
Yeah, I got it.
There you go.
It's okay. They each have one. Sorry about that,
And
guys.
Chris, you're going to need to adjust the microphone directly.
It's right here. Oh, well, I'm looking in that direction. Usually, they don't have a problem.
That's
Yes.
better.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. Thank
All
you.
right. All right, very good, Mr. Chair, members of the board. So what I was going to say is to beef up the columns to be consistent with the others, but I think this, I work some wording about having the columns be consistent with they have all the columns be consistent with each other. So I can work on wording for the columns. We'll have a comment.
perhaps with the exception of the front porch, those columns can be, they can be different, but the other columns around,
It should look substantial with whatever it's
Right,
supporting.
look, okay, that's...
okay,
that's
that's good
substantial.
direction, thank you.
Yeah, consistent and substantial. And then the... So we have the downspouts, we have this, the landscaping in the courtyard, that just really the oak tree is all we needed and some seating. I did want to just raise a point, though, because this could come up. Let's say somewhere along the line that the oak tree is damaged and removed. Something happens. Now, would we want to have them just replace it with an oak tree? I mean, the idea is to maintain the
That would be
seating.
up to the applicant to come
Okay.
up with something that's...
But the seating is still important, is that correct?
As a usable space.
Got it,
I mean, we're not
okay.
talking about
Okay.
just be a bench, it'd just be something as a gathering area, but I don't think it
Right.
needs to be entirely planted with shrubs and ground cover.
Exactly. So the additional landscaping is not what we want out there.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Fairly good. So downspouts, the central courtyard, the columns.
Was there also a request for a lighter color on the upper floor? Is that something the board wanted
Got to that.
to add?
No,
Board-
it was a suggestion, and I think it was a pretty strong no on their part, so
It did seem that way, yeah.
that's fine.
And we would also recommend that we provide conditions from our urban forester in regards to maintaining the oak tree during construction and so forth. So we'll add a condition to protect the oak tree in accordance with the urban forester's requirements.
Very good.
Thank you.
I just want to point out, Young, I have these two colors at my house, and this boxwood comes out much lighter, so there
Okay.
will be more of a contrast.
Oh, there was one more, I think, condition that we wanted to add, and that was to replace the crepe myrtle with a tree that is that grows to maturity to be a bit smaller, so it doesn't compete with the canopy of the street trees. And that you had recommended maybe a cercis, but whatever is planted should look substantial enough at planting so that it complements the overall design.
Correct.
Does that seem right? Okay.
Very good.
Okay. Chris, if you're comfortable that you collected all those comments,
Yes, I
I
did.
think we're ready for...
All right, very good. All right, do we have a motion to, for the project?
I move to approve with the conditions.
From Ms. Palmer. We have a motion to approve with conditions.
I second.
We have a second by Mr. Yu. And roll call, Ms. Yu, Ms. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Yu,
Yes.
Mr. Insua.
Yes,
That'd be 3-0, approved with conditions.
very good. Thank you. Okay, why don't we just take a little breath here and do the next project. All
You
righty.
don't have to do anything with the declaration?
No, because it's already been mainly there for your information.
Okay, the next project we're reviewing this evening, and the last one, is case number 1 PDR 2009-063-B, project address 3525 Downing Avenue, and we'll do the staff presentation.
Yes, good evening, Chairman Insua, board members. This case was first reviewed by the Design Review Board on April 29th, 2010, at which time the board voted to return for redesign. This is a second submittal for final review, and if you recall, the previous DRB submittal, you'll notice that it is placed on the board right here, dealt with the legalization of a second-story addition. There was a total addition square footage of approximately 1,400 square feet, 1,400, to an existing one-story, approximately 900 square foot home. Their total square footage for this particular project, and as existing, is approximately 2,400 square feet. Since that time, and based on the Design Review Board comments, the project has been modified, and the second story actually has been eliminated. The roof has been lowered, and the first story addition enlarged the building footprint in order to offset the loss in the second floor addition. So now you have a proposal that is just a one-story addition for a total of approximately 1,900 square feet. Again, the one-car garage will be demolished, and a new two-car garage will be constructed in order to comply with code. There is an active code enforcement case regarding the property. The code enforcement case started in 2007, and so this particular Design Review Board project would essentially be legalizing the illegal addition. The staff report was broken up into three distinct parts, first being site planning. Essentially, the current site plan you'll notice here is essentially the same building footprint as previously proposed, or in terms of the same location, except the first floor has been enlarged in order to offset the loss of the second story. The location of the home is sort of in the centralized portion of the lot with a two-story garage, two-car garage in the rear, very similar and compatible with all the existing surrounding homes in the Spar Heights neighborhood. Second topic in the staff report was mass and scale. Based on the elimination of that second story addition and the simplification of the roof forms and sort of the lowering, as obviously you see here, the lowering of the roof height, all of that has led to a reduction in the overall sense of mass and scale of the project. There was an issue with a previous, and again you'll notice previous front porch here, as you'll see here as well in the current proposal. There was some discussion in regards to the integration of, you'll notice here, it's best shown here, integration of the existing porch with the addition of the home. But again, that's somewhat yet to be resolved. Last topic in the staff report was the building design and detailing. As seen in the previous proposal, The existing home was somewhat of an English Tudor style home. The front has been maintained with the stained glass windows, the steeply gabled roofs and whatnot. The current proposal still maintains that front facade, yet the building proposal has been simplified again. The roof forms have been simplified. The roof essentially has been lowered. You'll notice here the previous gable stuck out again for the second story. That is now completely gone. You don't see that second story gable. The windows somewhat are the same ones that were shown, except you'll notice a few more. They are wood windows set within wood frames as proposed. That would be consistent with what we see out there currently on the home, and so staff is suggesting that that be maintained. The two items under the building design and detailing that sort of staff wonders and questions regarding the consistency would essentially be the fact that this particular front porch, the way that the rounding of the corners, its shape, its proportions are somewhat not true to the English Tudor Revival style period home. So, and because this is a porch that we could not find building permits for, there is a question as to, what can be done to better integrate the front porch with the style of the home. And secondly, the proposed set of plans you'll notice here had just a very simple flat roof. There was a proposal to add little dormer windows in order to break up the elevations of the roof form. That dormer windows could be a great detailed design. There was a little bit of a concern because the previous project involved the legalization of a completely illegal two-story unit. Not two-story unit, I apologize. Two-story structure addition that someone might misconstrue these dormers on the roof to have habitable space underneath the attic. And so we just want to make certain that the dormers are not leading to any habitable space if the board so chooses to approve the project with the dormer windows that are proposed by the property owner. In regards to the board's comments from April 29th meeting, the first comment and the primary comment was to engage a licensed architect to design or design professional to address the following major problematic issues. So the board essentially, first off, said hire a licensed architect. They have since, the property owner has since come back. Licensed architect has been retained. You'll notice here are the drawings and the comments that were presented by the DRB. One, the first being overall mass and bulk of the second story addition, as well as the first story addition must be appropriately integrated with the existing home. As I already mentioned, the second story has been completely eliminated. Roof forms have been simplified and the roof form lowered, so that has dealt with the overall massing and bulk. Second comment was that the roof with its numerous roof pitches, types, and awkward intersections be resolved. Again, with the elimination of the second floor, that item has been addressed. Third item was that fenestration pattern and hodgepodge of window type, sizes, and locations should be modified. Although the windows are somewhat still consistent, somewhat of a hodgepodge. When we take a look at it, because the second story has been eliminated, you don't have as much hodgepodge as you did before because the second story windows were much more different than what's seen on the first floor. The windows should be noted in the staff report on the north elevation. They're much smaller than the ones on the south elevation, but staff felt that's appropriate because this particular elevation is not really even visible from the street. The buildings are very set close together. There's only 8 feet from the adjacent property owner, so the smaller windows would even give greater privacy to the not only to this home but to the adjacent property owner. And since the windows aren't seen from the street, that's not really relevant. And last, that the inconsistency of various architectural elements be reconciled and integrated between the original simplified Tudor Revival style of the front elevation and the other 3 elevations. Again, for all the points that I just mentioned, elimination of the second floor, simplified roof forms, everything except for that front porch pretty much has been addressed. Should be noted that the board made a distinct comment, you might have to redesign the entire project and really reduce the overall scale and mass of the project from the previous one. Obviously, that was taken into consideration and has been addressed. Square footage went down from 2,400 square feet to just around 1,900 square feet. floor area ratio went down as well. It's much more compatible with the surrounding neighborhood development pattern. Staff recommends approval of the project with 3 conditions. One, that the windows, the proposed wood windows, be actually the ones that are installed and constructed for the first-story addition and set within wood frames with wood sills. The second item was to consider removing the front porch or redesigning the front porch to be somewhat more integrated in regards to this particular piece and obviously the proportions of the columns. And the last would be that if the dormer windows, as pictured here, as proposed by the owner, are approved, that, you know, on all the plans, it states that this is a 1-story home, that cross-sections be provided for in the building plans, and that it maintains so that there is no question as to whether or not there's a second story or any type of habitable space underneath the attic. That concludes staff's brief presentation, hopefully. If you have any questions, I'm available to answer them.
Any questions for Amelia? Thank you. Good presentation. Okay. Checking something.
Oh, and I might add, if you like, I can bring that up on the TV screen, but color and materials boards,
Pictures.
existing home, and then neighborhood photos.
Thank you. Okay. Why don't we have our first, and our only, Mr. Edward Hagopian, please, the architect. Your name and address, please, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and board members. My name is Edward Hagopian. My address is 220 South Kenwood Street, Suite 210, Glendale 91205. That's the address of my office. And I am the architect or designer of this new version. I think the presentation by Vilja was complete, and there's not much for me to say except that few things. I have one photo from the neighborhood for a similar situation with that porch in front. I would like to hand this to you. So you
Please
can-
do, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir. This is another home, a home.
Yes, that's another home, and these houses are oriented east-west. So in the morning we have sun coming from the east in the summertime that makes very hot, and I believe this kind of cover for the porch is helping to control the rain and sun. Now, in that picture, we cannot see what if the corners are rounded or straight. But I don't think that should be a very main issue here. It can go both ways. The other thing that I would like to say is that since the side setback on one side of this house was less than 5 feet, anyway, the second story could not exist because the side setback then has to be 5 feet. It's 4 feet, I believe 4 feet something, a little bit more than 4 feet. So that was another reason that we decided to make it one-story building. The colors and the materials will be the continuation of the existing. We forgot to show the downspouts and the gutters. That will be added. Which will be the same style, same color as the existing is. The garage, as Vilja explained, will be demolished, and the new garage will be built for two-car garage, according to the code, with the turning radius, again, according to the zoning code. That's all I can say. There's not much. It's a simple house. The owner likes that dormers, if you allow. By the way, may I approach?
Of course, sir.
There's not much height here for the second floor. If this is the ceiling line here, anyway, as you can see, there's not much height here to think of even for the second floor, and that's not the intention of the owner. Just simply to break this continuous roof here to give a little bit of variety to the roof line.
Thank you, sir. I saw that. I tried real quickly to put a scale on the section and then moved it up to, and you can see that it only at the very narrow center could there be head height. Okay.
That's all I can say. If there's any question, I'll be glad to answer.
Of course. Ms. Palmer?
Is there any reason that the garage has a different pitch than the rest of the house? Everything is 6 and 12, and that's 4 and 12 pitch on the garage, so it makes it look like it's...
Well, we try to make it, the 3 to 12 is the minimum we can go for. And we made it 4 to 12 so that we don't want to have a high roof next door, next to our neighbor on the left side of the property. So I thought it's not important that these two pitches to be the same.
There is also a height limit for accessory structures, so it would have to be max, pardon?
Thank you.
Correct, it would be 15 feet. So they can have a little bit of wiggle room if you so choose to match the pitch of the gables.
Question for you. The dormers that the owner would like to put in, are they purely decorative, or are they going to use them to get any light into the space?
I didn't
or?
think of that. If maybe we can get some light through kind of soffit,
Yeah.
bringing down the light. That's all. Yeah.
So you would be open to something like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
There is a cross-section actually that is pinned up, and it would be cross-section BB and AA directly underneath the, correct, underneath the elevations showing the dormers.
So right now they're not going all the way through. Okay.
No, they're not.
Okay. Ms. Palmer, any more questions for
No.
the architect? Mr. Yu? No, I'm okay. Sir.
Thank you.
Okay, well, why don't we close the public portion of the review? Mr. Yu, why don't you begin us today?
Okay. Second time, much better. All the comments that we made, you took them to heart, and you gave us a design where we can actually look at and start nitpicking, because the majority of what's there we can understand and it makes sense to us. Dormer-wise, I'm okay with maybe the dormers of it. I understand the perception of what it could be, but I think if you're going to put them in, use them and make them a decent size, and get some light into the spaces that are underneath them, create nice ceiling connection to those, and use them. That would be my only comment on that. The front porch area, we have nothing against those porches. It's just when it turns the corner in such an awkward way, and it sort of intersects that chimney, and it just destroys that corner, and you're gaining a 3 foot, 4 foot area that's going to be sunny most of the day anyway. I mean, no one's going to sit out there. So that part of it, I want to hear what you guys have to say. I think it would be nice if we got rid of that portion of it. You're already changing so much on the house. I mean, that's a little detail that's going to linger there. I think it's going to make the house so much nicer without that piece. I mean, it's sort of a reminder of what was, and I think it's going to be bad reminders. So the rest of it, I think it makes sense. It was well done. The wood windows are going to be wonderful. So I think that's all for now.
Thank you, sir. Palmer?
I think it's a great improvement also. I think all the questions have been addressed, and you've made a good effort to do so. I also agree that the front porch is upward, and if it could be redesigned to be more integral, that's fine. Otherwise, I would suggest removing it. The dormers I'm okay with as long as they're functional. And I feel strongly about the pitch. You have room on the garage. You're going to see it from the street and from the back. And that pitch should be similar to what the rest of the roofs are, because it looks detached at this point in time. I think that's all I have for now.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, I have one more question. We don't really get concerned with the interior, but since you've gone to all the trouble to do this entire house, and it may be mislabeled, it looks like there's 3 bathrooms, but I don't think there are. But there just seems to be a circuitous route to get from the rear bedrooms to the bath in the front, which is the only usable one, and maybe the pantry and the washroom could be changed a little. It's just, you've gone this far, you might ease the circulation or consider easing the circulation within the floor plan. But that's just a comment.
We all make mistakes. How we recover and respond to the mistakes is, I think, at least from what we've seen from the first time we saw this project to today. Thank you. I think that the mistake was made, and in a very short time, you took the suggestions and the directions, and you hired a very competent architect, and that should be thanked. I don't know if supported, congratulated, but thanked. Because projects like this don't often turn around that quickly. They often linger. Mr. Gopin, you wanted to say something, please come up. Because I think this is an important example of hearing us and go. Mr.
We
Gopin.
did all these things, and my suggestion is, if we possibly we can keep that porch.
Thank you, sir. Okay.
That was the porch.
Lives at the porch. So anyway, the roof pitch, I concur. I could see where staff is concerned about the potential regrowth of the roof line. I think the ceilings are relatively small, but you're probably going to retain the once floor joists into ceiling joists, because that would just be spending money unnecessarily. So you'll have floor joists in there which could span a live load, but the clearances, and I think the direction would prevent that from happening. But we'll make note of it, as staff is saying. I have nothing further to add except the porch. It's such a lovely home, it's such a lovely change, such a lovely neighborhood. The high pitches, the attention to detail of this Tudor-inspired home, distracted by poorly executed porch. No one's saying remove the porch. The porch makes sense. What we're saying is that when you look at the porch, especially as it turns the corner and that edge just disappears, and when you look at the thinness of the material, you're doing what you're proposing to do at this point a disservice. What I would suggest you should explore is, if you notice, this is an exploration. You notice there's a very nice language being created here by your gate, very nice language here by your gate, and a language that has the potential to look similar, but lost by this area here. And I don't want to draw on this, and then this is not to draw, but if you notice, if you just carry this line up here, you catch what's potentially capturing there, and you create that nice center line. You know, it just to create. So if maybe if you could define that a little more, that could help. Now, just for discussion purposes. Again, because you can see that there's, even in the photograph that you gave us, there's these two high peaks, and you can see that there's a definition going on there. And they created a porch that tied those two things in. I think maybe what should be explored, not unlike what we're seeing here, is saying, okay, sometimes removing doesn't necessarily improve something, but by adding to it, improves it. What I would suggest you do is take examples of what we're seeing here, this nice little sculpting. In this case, it has a nice little scalloping occurring here. And when you look at your porch, imagine, if you will, having those columns that come down and the long spans that really is the problem here. Imagine, if you will, and you've got a very talented architect, and certainly he's been around forever, knows what he does, and does some very good work. Maybe an adding of another element that doesn't do anything structural. It's just something to help the language that we're seeing here. Maybe thickening this one up a little bit, maybe adding a brick at the bottom. Something so that when you're turning, and then when you turn the corner to here, that same language is being picked up so that you're really creating something instead of trying to remove it. That would be my first exercise, because you built it, and then the roof elements above it aren't that bad, although, as Mr. Yu is saying, you hide the fireplace behind that, or the chimney. but it can be worked out. You have a very skillful and talented architect. So what I'm trying to say here is everything that I've heard is I'm supportive. We have very talented staff, very talented people. I would, especially on this project and with a very skillful architect, I would say I'm comfortable, me, myself, keeping the porch element, but giving the architect who has taken this project in a short time and think about adding and defining those spaces, I think it can be achieved. And I'm very comfortable that staff doesn't have to design it for them. They don't need to. You have a person, often staff gets in a quandary and in a bad position because you're now spending a lot of design time, which is not their job. Theirs is to review. We have in place someone who is very skillful and talented, and I'm comfortable and confident that when he puts a little bit of effort into it, something good's going to come out of there and you'll get your porch. That would be my recommendation for that. But we're a commission. Yes, Ms. Wright.
So that we understand, the recommendation or potential condition is to revise or remodel the existing porch so that it's better integrated into the house design. The roof of the porch could remain as is, but to refine and redesign the columns, the spacing, the articulation of essentially the vertical element of the porch. Is that what we're hearing?
That's what you're hearing, at
Okay,
least from me.
so
That's what you're hearing from me.
let's see what the other board
I
members
agree
say.
that the porch element is fine. I don't think it should wrap the house and go into that southern portion. I don't think that's a foreign element to the house. But if they want to cut that part off and do something with the other portion of it, I'm okay with.
Forgive me, Board Member Yu, when you say in terms of integrating it with the roof forms, are you proposing to eliminate that hipped corner edge?
Right. This whole portion here.
Okay.
So that I think so that if they remove that portion, you just have a shed coming forward.
Right, and if they worked out some kind of detail that captured that and made, like you said, and gave it a hierarchy of that being a secondary to the main.
It also improves that left side, too, when that's eliminated.
Right, so it would be open in that area. Yeah. And then maybe a nice little window that leads to the dining room right there. End of it. That's up to them. Right?
Okay?
So if you
Sure. Oh,
would like me to, Jimmy, are there any other additional comments? Okay. So if you don't mind, I'd like to repeat back the comments.
summarize.
First one, and I believe that I heard consensus that this would be a comment, would be all windows shall be wood or wood-clad fiberglass aluminum casement windows with exterior buttons set within wood frames. Is that correct? He nods, yes. Second one would be to adjust the pitch of the detached garage to better match the pitch of the home roof form. Third, that if the dormers are incorporated into the design, that they should be functional and allow light into the first floor rooms below. And just to add that, all plans will state that the home is one story.
And proportional.
Oh, and that the dormers be proportional? Now, would there still be a consideration to remove the front porch and otherwise, if not removed, that the porch be remodeled and better integrated into the design of the home, that the hierarchy of the vertical elements along the front elevation be the focus, and so that, and I'm not sure, I know that Board Member Yu suggested that corner hip roof element be completely removed so that it just becomes a shed roof, shed porch.
That's an option. I mean, if they come up with
An
something
option.
else, yeah, then
Okay.
that works better, that's up to them. But
So it would just essentially be that the remodel of the existing porch to be better integrated into the design of the home.
Yes.
With the following suggestions.
And if they decide to remove it, that's...
Correct. And that would be consider removing the porch. Otherwise,
right.
bring these in. So I have those 4 comments. Did I miss anything?
Yes, you wanted to make a statement that this is a single-story home, and that, I don't know how you're going to...
Yes. No, that was addressed under the dormer. So that, or if you'd like that completely separate, I can go ahead and make that. That would...
No, staff, so
Great.
much wiser in these things than us.
Not at all. So, with that said, and those comments, do I have a motion to approve the project with conditions?
I'll make a motion to approve with conditions.
I have a motion made by Board Member Yu, a second by Board Member Palmer. In terms of a roll call, Board Member Yu,
Yes.
Member Palmer,
Yes.
Chairman Insua.
Yes,
Motion passes 3-0.
perfect, thank you.
Now, we have 2 sets of minutes for this evening.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
We do. One of them that I've already signed because we wanted to hold off and check the record, and
Correct.
Harmony indicated, and Ms. Wright contacted me, and so that one's already been signed. And then the second one I have here.
Okay, forgive me, Board Member or Chairman Insua, which set of minutes was that? Was
the
that
one of
from
August 19th
August 19th?
has already been signed by me.
It has
This
been
evening.
signed. So that brings us to the minutes of September the 16th, and all board members were present. So,
Problem with that?
is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
And then by Board Member Palmer,
Yes.
Board Member Yu,
Yes.
and Chairman Insua.
Yes.
Motion passes 3-0. And we have one quick announcement by Ms. Wright.
Good evening. Wanted to mention that on October 12th, in a joint meeting of the Council, Housing Authority, and Redevelopment Agency, there will be a discussion of the green building policy. Until that agenda comes out on, I think, Tuesday, we say that's tentatively scheduled, but we anticipate it will be on that date, and since Chair Insua and Board Member Palmer participated in that task force, we wanted to make sure you knew about it and encourage you to join us for that meeting.
Would we be emailed like you guys always do so wonderfully, or let us know to put it on our calendar?
That email has already gone out.
That's correct. I remember seeing it, yes.
Actually, you haven't seen it because it went out about 10 minutes ago.
It vibrated.
They set you up for that.
I actually vibrated in my pocket, so yes.
So that report will be online, likely on Tuesday, under the agenda item. And if you have any questions, feel free to call me about that report. So thank you very much for your participation, and thank you to all of the Green Building Task Force members.
Good job. Thank you. Any more?
That is it. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting at 6:30?
Make a motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
We are adjourned.
Good job.
Good job.